2, 3, 4.
Hello everyone, and welcome to the Power of Music Thinking. My name is Christoph Zürn, and this is the podcast for people with a musical heart and a wicked job. We're looking for stories, insights and tools from the big world of music to inspire leaders and followers to listen, tune, play and perform in whatever field you're operating. My guest today is Sharon Stewart, musician, poet, researcher, piano teacher, and deep listener. We learn about the Center for Deep Listening at Rensselaer and the deep listening retreats by composer Pauline Oliveros and the many ways to listen. For example, listening in dreams, embodied listening, and that deep listening is about doing, writing, practicing, and experiencing. We talk about text scores, guiding principles, and using this in a non-musical context. And we also chat about the listening presence of leadership, and that we all might benefit when this would shift from just listening to listening with. And Sharon reads one of her text scores that she contributed to the listening guide for quarantine that was published at the beginning of the pandemic. Okay, let's get into it. Hello, Sharon. Welcome to the program.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Christoph, for inviting me. It's lovely to be here.
I'm really looking forward to our talk today. Today we talk about listening, and that's in some way strange if we talk about listening and not just listen. So, and there's a lot of things that we share together. But I want to start with one question, a personal question. What was your first memorable concert or sonic experience that had an impact on you?
Oh, I have immediately two. Is that possible?
Absolutely.
The one is when I was much younger, and I grew up in kind of a sectarian church. So not the really scary type, but the type that really believed we are the people of God and people not in the church are outside. A little bit related to Seventh-day Adventists or Jehovah's Witnesses. And I loved the singing. So I think I remember there was one of these high notes, I don't know, about probably, C or D or E. And I remember standing on the chair next to my mother and reaching for this high note with my voice. And that moment of feeling my voice blending in with the other voices, I could still get chills. So when you feel that the vibrations are, and you're melting in, but you can still hear them, so that was a real, powerful moment for me. Yeah.
So the blending from the personal to the communal, or?
Yeah, of course. Now I would say that. I think it was just, I suddenly just the vibrations, and I wanted to get that note, whatever. And then it just I just felt part of that collective sounding in this very easy, fluid way. And I just, this thrill filled me. I thought, oh, I love this so much. Unfortunately, I turned to piano because I think I would have much more enjoyed singing now that I say that. But and the other was the thrill. I grew up in North Georgia too, and my mom. There was that piano duo, two young women. They were sisters. I believe they were French. Anyway, she took me to a concert of theirs. It was the first piano duo with lots of fun things like The Entertainer, Scott Joplin, and so forth. And they were really, jazzy, fun. And then I heard the orchestra and the violin section live. And I think I was a young teenager. For the very first time in my life, I believe I'd heard maybe little ensembles and the violins. And I just, maybe I was 11, and that also took my breath away. Again, it's this sounding together, the high pitches. I guess I tended to like higher pitches, and seeing them also playing in unison, also just the movement, and probably something about that highly focused discipline, which is then later with my listening practice, something that I try to understand because it can be very healthy, but also can be unhealthy. So that the movement together in this very, encompassing sound that just also thrilled me. I did a bit of violin for a year or two, but I was already 12, and then I was standing on the stage with little kids. So then I thought, okay. But I did like sitting in my room, kind of cross-legged on the floor, and then trying to find, the tone. And that's also, I think, very good for pianists because you're actually trying to find a pitch rather than just, hitting the key. So
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
That's the easy part, or it looks like the easy part.
Yeah. So thank you. Those were two, really, in a way, now I see there is a relation that why they came up together. Yeah.
Nice. Sharon, can you tell us a little bit more about you, about your background, who you are, and what do you do for a living?
Yes. So I've already mentioned that I grew up in this church. I actually went to the university of that church in Big Sandy, Texas. It was called Ambassador University at the time, Ambassador College, and it became a university. But it was also disintegrating. And I had the opportunity, and this was also very formational, to go on a project for 1 year between my third and fourth year of doing a bachelor in business administration, but doing a lot of amateur accompaniment. So I accompanied the choir on their tours and stuff. And so I was able to go to Amman, Jordan, so in the Middle East. And I had done that also on a previous summer for a 6-week-long archaeological dig in al-Jamal, and that's in the north. It means the mother of camels, and it was a little area. And we worked with Calvin College together, and that trip was amazing. It really, I was thrilled by traveling through Jordan and seeing the beauties of the country, but also with people who are really knowledgeable about the history. So they would, with Petra, you would have the whole talk beforehand. Anyway, so when I was in Jordan, I met my Dutch partner, which is why I'm now in the Netherlands, who was working for the World Health Organization. And after I completed my degree, I actually went back another year. And those 2 years I worked in the National Music Conservatory, and that was under the Al Hussein Foundation with Queen Noor. And I think she led it with King Hussein at that time. And
that's interesting. Because what kind of music did you do in the conservatory?
Well, it was because, and we'll talk about maybe a bit about colonialism later, because it was, things were chopped up. Lebanon was more French related, you could say also governed, and they had a very strong British system. So they did the Associated Board for the Royal Schools of Music. So I taught piano lessons there. I also taught theory to a class from the Associated Board of the Royal ABRSM methodology, feeling a little weird. But what was also interesting is I worked with another woman to try to create lesson materials for teachers without any music experience to teach music in an elementary school situation. But here we go. That's when I became confronted with the fact that Western music is not all music. And why in the world when there's like the intricate melismas, the intricate drum patterns of the Middle Eastern music, why in the world are we sitting there with 1, 2, 3, 4 quarter note, and the fact that the language runs, right to left, and music runs left to right? So I think this was probably the seeds also of my critical, also look at, this is not the history, it's the history of Western music, or this is Western music theory, but it's not all of it by any means, and it's actually one small historical thread. So I didn't realize that at the time. So after that, I went through, I joined my partner then in Paris, France. So the Bois de Boulogne was a little regional conservatory, Billancourt, and they let me study some histoire de musique and analyse de la musique in French, and I managed somehow to pass also a couple of courses. And I worked with a piano teacher there and did kind of like a vooropleiding for going into conservatory in the Netherlands. And so the minute I arrived here, I headed to Utrecht and then got my master's in The Hague in music pedagogy. So that was all a very long time ago, it feels like now. And since then, I kind of trained myself in more like the sound design. So becoming familiar with Logic, I think it was Logic 9 at the time, recording, and working on little, creating sound works using not only musical instruments, but found sounds.
Well, what is sound design? So So when
I don't even
people
know.
listen to us say, "Oh, what's sound design?" So is it like shaping an instrument, or and we also had in one of the earlier episodes Steve Keller, and he's from about sonic branding and things like this. So where is sound design?
I realize I probably shouldn't have used the word sound design. So let's say sonic works. So for me, the first thing I really worked on was something called Beau's Book. And it was a children's book based on non-gendered child and also not easily definable. Probably European or North American. But the child is very sonically oriented. So it sees the spoon swinging and just trying to figure out which sounds might. So it's maybe like a Hörspiel or something like that. And that was really arduous work because I not only to finish my master's I had created something called Sirens, which was kind of wild. But that was mostly piano and voice. But this one I was really trying to find sounds that would express the playfulness of a child and also the narrative, but also in a very dreamlike way. So kind of like inner thoughts, inner like daydreams. And now what, in the end, what I've done, and I've worked since then with a few, usually dance solo or dance duo with dancers and one theater work. And what I'm doing is using field recordings, actually. So a combination of field recordings, effects, and then really trying to get into the atmosphere of what's being listened for, not looked for, but listened for.
Yeah, very good.
And creating also, now my voice is also pausing, works with enough silence that the sound doesn't dominate, but it works as one element, both with what's going on stage as well as, I think, the auditory and visual imagination of the audience. I find that very important. So there's immersive works, but I really like, for me, the audience needs to kind of also do something to involve themselves. So it's more like a kind of, what's that in English now? A loca?
To seduce them, for interaction.
To get involved, even if it's not, we haven't gone into the area of actual participation, although I would love that, but to get imaginatively active.
Great.
If there's a silence, what am I hearing or what am I experiencing? Yeah.
I also asked about the sound design because you mentioned you've been in Paris, and when I hear Paris and sound design, I think at Pierre Schaeffer or Pierre Henry, that 1948 did. Let's call it experiments to just record something and and work and work with that material. So the famous song was about a creaking door, and he did all the variations of that creaking door, and he make a musical piece out of it. And nowadays would say, oh, we just sample and play and play with the samples. So this is something that reminds me to it. And also talking about spatial hearing in Groupe de Recherche Musicale, you have the loudspeaker orchestras, and I heard them once in a concert, and you're sitting in a concert hall, and there's only one person at the mix on the mixer, so that's the composer, a producer, and then you have 120 different loudspeakers. That's it. And you really, when you hear the songs, you really can see that it comes exactly from one there on the right side and the other tone on another side. So that's, that was just popped up in my mind.
That's a beautiful experience. How did you experience that in your body physically? Was it quite amazing, or?
Yeah, it was more the let's say the experience to experience something that you've never heard before in that way. So if people are in a room and everybody's talking, then you say, oh, he's far away, he's closer, but with music that is composed for this. So that's electronic. Nowadays we call everything electronic music, but these were the pioneers. And in a way, like also Stockhausen with electronic music, where you take one sinus and another one, and make something new that was really unheard. But that was more the thing that I just get triggered.
I love spatialized music, and in 2012 there's the ZKM, Zentrum für Kunst und Medien in Karlsruhe.
Zentrum für Kunst. I studied in Karlsruhe. I worked there.
Ah, okay. Then you know the Klangdom.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So I experienced that for the first time in 2012 in a smaller version. It was, I think, only 16 or 24 speakers. They had used it for the sound art exhibition, and you could see the software working. And how that impacted my body was amazing. And there's also this 4D sound by Paul Oman. That's a huge, with these pillars with special Omni speakers embedded. I think Bloom is a special. I shouldn't say things that I don't know for sure, but Bloom speaker design is a Dutch product. Anyway, and they were working together with Ableton to really create also a software. And now they're in Budapest. So with a lovely center. So maybe, you could go. So it's a residency too. And they're very, very interested in sound spatiality and listening. Oh. So this is a lovely
sounds
contact for you.
So there are many experiences there. But Sharon, you also are a researcher in Artes, and you're also talking about deep listening, and that's a word that we hear a lot. Let's say the last years. And if you have a musical background, so deep listening is connected with certain kinds of deep listening, I have to say, and sometimes people just use it to indicate that you have to listen very deeply. But can you tell us a little bit more about your deep listening journey?
Yes, I would love to do that. So when I was graduating from my master's, I came into contact with the Deep Listening CD by Pauline Oliveros and Stuart Dempster and Panay Toys. So I have to get his name.
Maybe you can tell us a little bit more about Pauline Oliveros, because I think we know it.
Yeah.
But I think a lot of people don't understand who she was. We have to say she passed away, I think, 5 years.
Yes, like, 4.5. So you're exactly right. Yeah,
she was not famous like other musicians are famous, but very, very well known. Has a lot of influence also on different musicians. But you met her, right?
Yes, and Pauline Oliveros was born in 1932 in Houston. She worked in the San Francisco Tape Music Center. She did a lot in these kind of pioneering electronic music systems, also in Toronto, that were being set up. She worked at the University of California in San Diego, setting up a kind of a new music program there. And later, she worked on her, her own art, kind of moving away. And then towards the end of her life, she was at the Rensselaer Polytechnic Institute, which is where I now also work as a core teacher for the Center for Deep Listening.
Yeah, right.
So that's the very, very quick story about this amazing, incredible woman, Pauline Oliveros. So what happened was I came across this CD, and the minute I heard it, it was on some very bad speakers, and it was, I don't know, iTunes or whatever. I was immediately like, lightning went through me. I thought, what is this music? It was an improvisation in a 2 million gallon cistern with this natural resonance. And I looked into her, and she was part of my writings at the time, my thesis. And then in 2008, I think the beginning of 2008, I thought, oh, what's going on with deep listening? Mm. And I looked online, and I saw that they were having a retreat in Cork, Ireland. So I went to that retreat, which was mind-boggling. And then I went to 2 consecutive retreats after that, in Dartington in England and one in Camallera in Spain. So 2008, 2009, 2010. And in 2010, I completed my certificate. So I became a certificate holder in deep listening. And during the retreats, what you experience is also periods of nonverbal communication. So they don't call it silence, right? Because silence doesn't really exist. But you're not tapping into the verbal. So you're communicating without words. And that was extending from a period, I think, of like somewhere in the evening till around lunchtime. So in that sense, it had one of that meditative theme. And we would get up early in the morning and go with Eloise Gold, who is a dancer, Tai Chi instructor, talented choreographer, and really beautiful, funny woman. And we would take these morning walks with a certain thing. We would repeat as our feet touch the ground, and we would do exercises to encourage the receptivity of the body. And
it
then,
sounds a little bit like mindfulness also. So if you nowadays go to mindfulness, so we have a perspective from the music and from hearing and listening, but a lot of people would say this is some kind of mindfulness. And were there also non-musicians there, or was this only musicians?
The lovely thing is there were, I believe, yes, absolutely. From the first time I went, there was a visual artist there who was not trained in music. And let me think. Yeah, I can't remember. It's quite a while ago, but that's the nice thing is that it doesn't, the practice does not require you to have a musical background or any specialized training. Everyone can
participate. Everybody has 2 ears and can listen.
Yeah, and you can participate, I believe, also if your cochlear hearing is not functioning. So I do believe that and that's something that the last scores that I wrote for Listening Quarantine for Soundtrack City, I made them listening scores that should be performable also by people whose ears function differently than ours, who are even profoundly deaf. So that's an important aspect for me. Yeah. Yeah.
So maybe just talk a little bit more about the retreat and how this worked, and then come back to what you just mentioned, to the listening guide for quarantine, because this was in the pandemic. You had some suggestions what people could do when they're all of a sudden have to stay inside.
Homing inside out.
Homing inside. But first, again, the retreat. How long was the retreat, and what do people do there? Is this some kind of vacation that you could that people could do? And then I talk, let's say, people that are maybe not so much infected by music and everything that you can hear like the two of us, but people that think, hey, wow, this is interesting. I should dive a little bit more into this.
Then it was 5 days long, and my goodness, it was intense. I mean, you were just, because as you said with mindfulness, then, and it was like, so after this morning opening the body practice, we would go into meditative listening practices, so global focus listening, remembered sounds, imagined sounds, all kinds of lovely ways of listening, exploring your listening habits. And then you have little text scores, so sonic meditations or text scores that are little algorithms, like give sound, receive sound. These kind of, that if you just start that process, you can create a work. And these were kind of these had very specific rules, little text scores that you would follow, but the outcome was very dependent on the group. And that was what was so beautiful there. I'll give one very important example for me. It's called this one never became codified in her anthology of text scores, but we've kind of, as the community, we're the deep listening community, we've created it. You do a very extremely slow walk. And at the same time, you sing a childhood song that meant something to you deeply as slowly as possible.
Oh.
So you have this, and in the beginning, it's this kind of cacophonous, kind of amorphous, kind of moving cloud of sound. And then slowly, because we're, as humans, we entrain, so we start connecting, and then you start like, suddenly things, you just hear it as you click. Maybe it's the same experience I had as a child. Suddenly the whole thing just starts to make sense. Oh. And it really brought tears to my eyes the first time of, because it's not only, it's just how we are as humans. It taught me something about what a group of humans who slow down, who listen, how they start to actually come in phase with each other, just like a school of fish. Yeah. And that what I thought, aha. And it's very hard to put into words, but it's something I thought, this is, and I think John Cage did say, now I understand true harmony, when he experienced something by Pauline Oliveros. And I might not be quoting it right or citing it correctly, but that's the harmonious aspect of human interaction with sounding and with listening. And then this is very lovely. Towards the evening, we had dream work with Ione, or Ione, sometimes she's called, and that is the creative partner and the artistic director, also, and the partner of Pauline. And she's a magical dream keeper, dream weaver. And it was about listening in dreams. So entering a 24-hour listening in every possible way to everything possible here, no matter what you are doing. And that's kind of the deep listening quote by Pauline. So entering into this heightened state and the mindful state of listening and remembering when you're not listening. But yes, it is exhausting. At the end of that, I was kind of like a little, one of those little wires that would just kind of vibrate with every little sonic input. So, but beautiful, transformative, many levels. I mean, we could talk for another 2 hours about it. And very, very funny people. We broke because we had to be quiet during dinner or something, and we were in this part of this hotel restaurant in Cork. And suddenly we just kind of spontaneously burst out into one of these, kind of crazy rhythmic things with the plates and the wall fixtures and someone singing this little mini opera. And it was, just so much fun. Yeah.
Great. Yeah. What fascinates me with what you say, and also when we talk about deep listening, everybody can hear or everybody can listen. And also your example of listening in dreams, that's the nice thing. If we ask people to close their eyes, that's easy. If we ask them to close their ears, they need two fingers or a headphone. And even if this also means that even in your dream, you get some kind of information or you hear in a dream. So I think that's one part. And the other part is that it's not only interesting for musicians, it's also interesting for everyone to understand what you hear and to understand when you listen and to understand how you listen. And sometimes I ask people, how do you listen to your business? What does this mean? And you can ask this any person in with any profession to how do you listen? How do you listen to your kids? How do you listen to your partner? And that's an interesting part. And we just talked about the listening guide for home quarantine. So when the pandemic started, I saw a link that you wrote a PDF about what people can do in quarantine. Or can you elaborate a little bit more on that?
Yeah, and I'm going to get the little book because it's very important that I give credit where credit's due. Because I just contributed as an artist. I have them here, but the rest upstairs. Okay, so this is a publication by Soundtrack City, Mystifiers, and Stein. And that is with Michiel Huisman and Guy Wood, Vivian McGillivray. Oh, I've never said her last name, McGillivray. She's a lovely last name.
I will also put the link into the show notes because people can just download it for free, right?
Right. This is free, open access. And they asked me to contribute around embodied listening. So that's the connection where I thought, if I'm doing embodied listening, can I just listen with my whole body? Yeah. So what vibrations am I picking up? What sensations? And that was where the connection with that you do not particularly have to be a person who kind of hears in the
everybody can listen, and everybody can have an experience of or listening with your whole body. And maybe this sounds a little bit too much for people that never heard about listening, but it's also the way how you listen to your employees and how you do the things that you do in daily life. So how open are you for that information that it's already there, but it's maybe not yet inside of your ear or inside of your understanding. But can you give us a few examples of the suggestions that you did? So can you share them with us?
Yeah. So I wrote 4 scores, and because of this listening in dreams, it was important for me to frame it like you have the hypnopompic and the hypnagogic moments when you're waking up and going to sleep. And these can be moments where, because your dream brain functioning kind of switches over into your waking, or the other way around. And it can open you, if you're talking about listening, to little insights, maybe emotional insights, maybe little words of wisdom. Sometimes people will hear words as they're waking up and suddenly they realize, and this documented that a lot of, some of the, I think even the table of elements was kind of something that happened when that scientist, who I don't know now, realized that as he was waking up. Might have been so I'll look that up again.
Normally they would say it's a eureka moment, but actually it was like in that stage of between sleep and waking up. I think it's the REM.
No, that's the rapid eye movement. That's in the deep sleep. So this is the hypnopompic. Is when you're. I think for me, I'm not sure. I'm not neuroscience, but I think it's the lowering of the action in the frontal cortex that's trying to rationally process things, because that's the state you can come in when you're also improvising, and you kind of turn off you try to the self-critiquing aspect. Anyway, you're so interesting. I'll try to, and I'm very associative thinker, so I can go off on it.
And Sharon, maybe one thing, because you mentioned the word score, and we have it often about musical score, but in the music thinking framework that I developed, I use everything as a score that can help you to do something. So that's a very easy one. And that's what I think is interesting. And I think it came in some way from Pauline Oliveros, because when she made the score, there are a lot of text scores. And I think the suggestions that you did, and maybe you can read out one or two, there are text scores, and then people can try to see what this does with them.
Wonderful. Okay, so I'll do score 1, listening to waking up. So if you have a natural awakening, sense yourself waking, but keep your eyes closed. And if you wake up with an alarm clock, turn off the alarm and close your eyes. Listen to the atmosphere of your dream space. Breathe and listen. Slowly open your senses to the atmosphere and vibrations of the room, the street, the neighborhood, surroundings. Open your senses as far as you would like. Breathe and listen. Let the atmosphere of your dream space linger as you arise.
Did you get feedback from people that tried it out?
There is a researcher in Canada now who is doing a project where he is getting qualitative data using this book and the various. But that I haven't. I have someone. No, I haven't. I would like. People can in the book. Yeah, you can. It doesn't make sense to show it to people in the podcast. But.
That's the easy part. We will do in the show note. We will set in the PDF, and if listeners try out a few of your very we ask them to give a feedback via Twitter or directly to us. That's very
wonderful.
Yeah. Why I love this so much is that sometimes in when we communicate together, either in society or in business, we have vision documents, long pages, and most of them are just to show. So with to show, I mean this is something like a vision is something that we would get in the future. And in many organizations, this is interesting, but people don't know what to do. And I love so much that these scores and these text scores, meaning actually everybody can also write a text score. So if we would do, instead of PowerPoints, we would do text scores, I would say that's maybe a very practical thing that everybody could do. And the inspiration is Pauline Oliveros or your PDF to really try to give some kind of instructions, and sometimes it also sounds a little bit like a guided meditation. So there's something in between, and people can choose what resonates with them the most.
This was the one aspect that I didn't talk about. The deep listening retreat was creation. So always from the beginning, we were involved in creating either solos, in duos, in a group, creating text scores to be performed either in the middle or at the end. And this is indeed once kind of, if you had a question, you're kind of, I think your flow charts are kind of like a text score, but you could indeed create like say, okay, this is we are having a communication problem or something. Create, a text score in which we can kind of work out this problem or something. That would be a lot of fun. And yes, I love that, because deep listening is about doing and experiencing and the iterative practice of doing. So if you write a text score, you need to do it and you practice it, and then you rewrite it, and then you make it, and then you refine it, and you refine it through an iterative artistic practice, but it could be an iterative business practice. Absolutely. Yeah.
And entrepreneurs are also very creative, so that's for me a very easy link. So everybody can try out this. No, that's nice.
And what I do, and what I is encourage. Indeed, you are talking about all the ways So say you're entering a group meeting and there's everyone sitting around the table, and maybe you're running a bit late or whatever, a bit stressed, that you realize that with the quality of your listening, you can change the atmosphere in the room. And it's kind of related. Pauline was very attracted to the scientific practice of the observer principle, so that you will always have an effect on, and you will the data that you're observing. But this, in this sense, is maybe used a little bit more as an analogy. As you go in and you just simply sit there, you can already be listening on many different levels simultaneously as you practice. So you listen to your own body of like, okay, what's going on with me now that I'm a bit late. You notice how you're picking up on the body language signals of those around you. You're often picking up so many subtle signals from people that you were talking also about the fact that we cannot close our ears as we can close our eyes, but we have this auditory cortex that filters incredibly. So often what you're doing is you're getting important information, but because maybe it seems to be too much for you at that moment, you're filtering it out. So and everyone has their own filtering habits. So maybe because of a childhood trauma, if someone seems a bit angry, either that might immediately cause you a lot of distress, or you might completely filter that out because you just do absolutely have chosen as an adult not to deal with that. So and this all affects receptivity, and receptivity then affects how you're able to engage again. And the whole sonic meditations were about the fact that our society is often geared on giving information, marketing, getting your little 10-second, what's it called? Not punchline. What's it called?
Punchline or sound bites.
Sound bite, your little sound bite, your little sell point.
Snackable content, all these ugly words.
And she was already very concerned about, okay, what about genuine receptivity? So what, and this is given by the kind of a very simple graph of, if you imagine a circle, and in that circle is a little dot. So the circle is kind of the full capacity of your conscious awareness. And that can be, incredibly large. So you can be in that meeting, listening to yourself, listening to your colleagues, paying attention to their body language, hearing what's going on the street, thinking about, what you might eat that evening. And you can be holding and paying attention to all these things equally. And that's the kind of awareness, a big 360-degree awareness. You can also have the ability to focus. So there's one detail that's very important. Okay, what's that comment that's just been said? What's that feeling I'm feeling? And what's that intuitive, belief, or what's my value here? And you can really focus in and really attend to that, and then you can go back to that global. And people, like some people who say they have maybe attentional problems, often are very good at that global listening. So everything's coming in, and it's the focusing that presents problem for them. I, as a musician and someone trained a musician, I was hyper focused. So I wanted to hear one thing. I could hear that one thing, but that meant I would neglect to hear that cough in the audience when I'm performing. But that's the thing that then suddenly throws me off, So that being able, and that's to fluctuate between that multidimensional listening and the focused listening, and knowing what your listening habits are, can have a profound effect on how you engage in a group. And you can be quietly sitting receptive the whole time, and through the quality of your listening. And I've experienced this with Pauline Oliveros. I could cry. She had an amazing listening presence, so that when you came in her presence, you stepped into a deeply and profound state of receptivity and openness to all that is, the continuum of sound and silence. So,
I like this very much to stress this, that you say to have a listening presence. Huh? We always say leadership or listening is a top leadership skill. And we could add to, as a leader, you need a listening presence. So I like this very much, and I also like what you just said a few minutes ago: the filtering habits. To understand what are my filtering habits. So you're a musician and someone is coughing in the audience. You try to filter it away because it has nothing to do what you are at the moment. But also when we, as a business or in society, when we hear stuff, so what information do we filter out? Because this has nothing to do where we focus now, or where can we open our filters. But the most important thing to understand that we have a filter, and that it's maybe also a decision, or maybe maybe another word for bias. But bias sounds so abstract. But filtering habit, I like this. I like this very much.
Yeah, it's nice. It has this dial kind of thing, like you can dial your filter or something.
Yeah.
And if you don't mind, this is also kind of a segue to, or a segging into. Oh yeah, segue is a little thing, and I think segging into what I do believe, and I'm also, and we talked slightly about this before we started, have a critical look at Western business, and I believe you just hit on it. What the thing is what are you filtering out? And I believe that, since the Industrial Revolution, we have been filtering out our impact on non-Western groups and the impact of our own business goals on the entire world. And these have been consistently and violently and very nastily filtered out in order to create, kind of this wealth and for a certain groups of society. And this has to do also with perceptions of value. And that's part of the listening practice. Is I'm developing an idea also within Artes and the professorship theory in the arts. I just started a trajectory looking at ethics in the arts. And if you're talking about someone who, as a leader, you are, yes, listening to people, but I also like to think you're also always listening with people.
Ah.
And you're listening with your environment. You're listening with the insects, with the animals, with the water, with the soil, with the whole land, with the indigenous peoples of that land. And this has an ethical component because you, in that listening with, you are accounting for all the other ways of listening that are beyond your capacity. I mean, a dolphin listens in ways we can't even begin to fathom. A bat listens, spiders listen. They're, doing research now trying to understand the vibrations. I think was it MIT? I don't want to give MIT credit for everything, but they're doing someone's doing a fabulous study on how spiders listen. And that's also, that's the third score, becoming spider in the book. So look that up for the homing inside out. I love spiders. So, and when you listen with, you're accounting for that network of listening possibilities that you can't even begin to imagine. So as a white settler who comes in and has not learned to listen with the land, you might listen to it, but you're listening to it with your filters. And that listening with has a component that you are also being listened to. So what you are doing and the message you are bringing and either the value you're adding or the destruction you are causing is being listened to by every living being in that environment. And if you're listening with that, you cannot help but to hear that as well. And that must be, and I'm quite, I'm also part of my activities is environmental activism. That must be a place where we all collectively go to add true value, not monetary value, because that's just an imaginary number. It has nothing to do with real value. So, that's my little, that's like my preaching to the choir there. Thank you for smiling so kindly at me. But I know you're working with institutions who also take this very, very seriously. And if we do not turn this train around by listening with each other, we're heading towards a pretty clear, disaster point within 10 years. So I'm feel passionately that, we can do it, and we can use our incredible adaptability as humans, but we need to also have a little bit of humility and understanding our filters, our limited listening in that vast network of listening capabilities.
I think that's absolutely beautiful. And I really like that listening with. That's a really for me a great takeout. If we and at least if we ask that question, whom are you listening with, and not just what do you hear? And I love this very much. So thank you very much, Sharon, to share these insights with you. And how can people connect to you if they would like to know more about you? I will put the PDF in the show notes and everything, all the URLs that you would like to share.
Yes, and I'm kind of hard to reach. I found out by someone. I don't have my own website. I have multiple. I have my own SoundCloud and so forth. I give piano lessons still 2 afternoons a week on handsonpiano.nl, and there's a contact form there. You can get in touch with me that way. I'm reachable through Joke Alkema, Studium General in Artes.
And I also like it very much. So if you want to talk with me, I have to book a lesson for hands-on piano. So I get the message.
That's right. That's right.
Sharon, thank you very much.
Thank you. Yes.
Thank you so much for listening. I really appreciate this because listening is one of the top leadership skills, and I feel honored about this. It is my mission to find, create, and share inspirations for meaningful collaboration based on music analogies. If you want to support this, please subscribe to the podcast, give us a rating, or write a review on iTunes or Spotify. And more inspirations can be found on musicthinking.com. We have a blog, and you can download the Music Thinking Framework. And finally, I would love to hear your feedback. And if you need help with a business challenge, please reach out to me via email, podcast@musicthinking.com.